welcome to part 2 of my experience of total hip excision 2 years ago. Part 1 was fairly long, but it gives you an explanation of how we got to this point. To pick up where we left off, I was admitted to hospital on the last day of November. We drove up to the hospital. It was about an hour and a half away from where I live, so we had to start at a ridiculous hour in the morning, and it remains to this day the last time I was able to ride as a passenger in a normal car without wheelchair adaptations. So in a way, I kind of find it sad now looking back. But we got there, the COVID test hadn't arrived before me like it was supposed to have done, but they did another rapid one because this was still, with the COVID restrictions, was still in places in many areas of the UK, and because of where the hospital was, it was subject to different rules than where I lived. So, and the hospital, even though the hospital where I live was starting to allow a limited number of visitors, I was told I wouldn't be allowed any visitors for the duration of my stay because they had retained a strict no visitor policy, and they'd also reduced the number of beds in each hospital bay, because in the UK NHS it's quite normal to be on a multiple occupancy ward unless you are quite ill or infectious or something. More about this later. So I got to the hospital and I said goodbye to my dad for what was supposed to be a period of 4 days, but ended up, as you will see, being much longer. So I was admitted into a very new part of the hospital. It was very swish looking. It reminded me of an American sort of Grey's Anatomy set. It had electronic clear glass doors on the cubicles, which was interesting for me. Sadly, the rest of the hospital wasn't so modern. But by 9 a.m. in the morning, I was lying in the room where they give you general anaesthesia, having seen the anaesthetist. And I was knocked out. And the next thing I can remember was waking up in the high dependency / intensive care area of the hospital, and being struck by a severe amount of pain. Now, I had expected this because, as I said before, I had experienced hip surgery, but I wasn't quite expecting to be as ill as I was in the aftermath of the surgery. I don't think I took account of A, my age, and B, quite what a part COVID was going to play in the eventual outcome of things, as you will see later in this video. So now I'm going to, I think, explain this video by using clips from my hospital stay and photographs, and I will do a voiceover to explain to you what's going on and explain to you why certain things happened. This is a diagram of the surgery they did. The big white space is where the hip ball would have been, and the blue represents the muscle they used to keep the remaining bone in place. This was when I woke up in the HDU/ICU part of the hospital the day after the surgery. I remained there for a couple of days and the care was excellent. Over the next few days you can see my leg starts to pull in, and when they started sitting me up, the cushion was wrong for the way my pelvis was now orientated. I had problems with the wheelchair cushion, but because it was COVID, I couldn't get anything changed, and I was hoping that the hospital itself would be able to do it, but it would have appeared not. So I had to start enduring long periods of time in a wheelchair and a cushion that was no longer suitable for the body and pelvic structure I now found myself with. And I can say the agony was such that I couldn't think. My brain wouldn't do anything else. It couldn't even think. The agony was so bad, and I would like to think, a high pain threshold. You can see here that my leg is now starting to bend uncontrollably because it's not restrained, and we made some small attempts to restrain it with the nurses. They really tried their best because physio wasn't helping, or the extent of physio seemed to be to get me into a chair and sitting up for hours. As the only physio seemed to be wanting to get me up and sat in a chair, I was able to source a company that would rent a tilting space wheelchair, and my brother sent them, the company, my measurements and my credit card details, and arranged for the chair to be delivered to the hospital. So that made the remaining time in the hospital bearable because they could easily change my position. However, as you will see from these pictures, the time spent in the wheelchair, tilting space wheelchair, and sitting up in the other chair without my leg being stretched out at other points had left me with a marked contracture. So, as you can see, I am so disappointed in many ways with how the hip surgery turned out. It's only now as good as it is because my doctors have worked so hard trying to rectify some of the problems I was left with. I mean, I know I went into surgery understanding that there could and very probably would be some problems I was left with. What I didn't anticipate was the complete lack of aftercare following the surgery, and the lack of understanding of both my underlying condition and the fact that the idea is if you have a surgery, you try and set it up so that everything possible is done so it works out well. Whereas with the hip surgery I had, it seemed from the outset that it was almost kind of done under duress because they left it for so long, and then there was no sort of intensive physiotherapy or major aims to make sure that the bones healed in the appropriate position. So now I'm left with problems that will probably be with me for the rest of my life unless we can find somebody who would be up for going in there and trying to rectify things, and I don't even know how they would do that. And I would have to be sure that there was sufficient aftercare and knowledge about things, knowledge about all my underlying problems, and I would make sure that there was at least some post-surgery physiotherapy that was more than just sit you in a wheelchair and torture you for so long per day. Because when you look at the literature on this procedure, it's very clear that people need to have their seating needs and needs related to spasticity addressed. So it's not like this issue isn't known about in the literature, and it's just like the actual medical literature didn't translate to what happened on the hospital ward. So here I am now, and I have lost any, I think, independence I had left. I know things were going downhill by the time I had the surgery, but I lost a big bulk of independence in that surgery, and there hasn't been the resources to help me get anything back. I mean, the local hospital has put a lot of effort into me, and that is how I am as good as I am. But even so, that the amount of effort that has comparatively gone into me, I still needed more physiotherapy and more targeted help. So that's just been my experience of the whole hip surgery in the end. So I've been left with, I still have quite a significant amount of chronic pain, and I have some nerve pain within that. I have now got a small space between my knees, but even that isn't as big because they didn't do muscle releases as it was when I originally had the surgery, because my knees weren't kept apart, the muscles tightened up again very quickly. So I've lost a good amount of what I had post-surgery. So it's just something I hope that people are aware of when they go in to have surgical interventions. And I would have liked to have seen a video on it, or at least on a video of somebody like me having surgery in this country, in the healthcare system that exists at the time when I had my surgery. So I thought I would make a video to fill the gap. I think the surgery in itself is a very good thing, and it has the potential to free a lot of people from a lot of chronic pain. But if the aftercare isn't there, there is no sense doing big operations if aftercare, physiotherapy, occupational therapy and equipment isn't readily available to help people through the post-operative process. and you're never going to get the best out of it. So with that comes the end of this review of hip surgery 2 years on. I would think at 2 years on I am about where I expected to be at about 2 months post-surgery, I think. And quite what improvements will be made from here on in, I don't know. Because physiotherapy I can only provide for myself out of pocket. The biggest problem, I think, with regard to this is that the NHS deals with acute care fairly well. If you have a car accident or something, you may face a long wait in A&E, but you will get the treatment you need. Whereas if you have a chronic health condition, particularly if it's not classified like a disease-based thing, you can fall through the cracks fairly easily. Like, I require ongoing physiotherapy maintenance, but there is no NHS service that can provide that, whether I was a paediatric patient or now that I am an adult. Now, when I was younger, if you went to a special school, which I did, you had regular physiotherapy until you were 16, and then that stopped. But now, I think with the increasing mainstreaming of pupils into schools that don't have access to physiotherapists within them, that kind of thing has become an increasing problem. So if improvements are made to services like physiotherapy and neurorehabilitation under the new government that we have, who knows, it's possible I could make some progress again. I can only hope for that, and I will keep working on things myself and keep trying to seek out other therapies and ways of funding them, or ways of trying to be able to do therapy myself, like my handheld exercise bike, etc. So, but other than that, I think that there's not much more to be said for the hip, other than sometimes I wish I'd have had it done the very old-fashioned way with the traction that they used to do. But we can't go back now, or I don't think we can, so I just have to move forward from here. And I hope this video is of some help to you guys, and I hope to see you again in future videos if you found this video useful, or if you've seen any of my others and you've returned. I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.